Money doesn't just come from one place. It drips, trickles, flows, and floods into our lives in different ways. Welcome to Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood, a podcast that explores the power of multiple income streams. We've got merch. That's right. Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood t-shirts are officially here, and they're as comfy as they are conversation starting. Grab yours at the link in our show notes. Hey, Tony, how are you today?
Good. How are you, Melissa?
Oh, I'm doing good. It's going to be a warm one, so I'm getting ready to, after we're done recording this, I'll take the dogs to the park. It's going to be a nice sunny day, I think.
Good. Yeah. And no smoke, it doesn't seem like.
Oh, yes.
Washington has been, well, Eastern Washington has been a bad scene. So it's nice that there's no smoke. I heard that the fires are pretty contained, especially in Spokane where they were really, really bad. So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's
well,
getting better. Not as smoky. Well, we have a cool discussion today that we've been wanting to do for a while. As you all know, we talk about drip, trickle, flow, flood in every episode. And a lot of times we will talk about multiple income streams in relation to people having different revenue streams that rely on some kind of work. So it can be multiple jobs, perhaps, or more likely, we're talking to people who have multiple revenue streams, like multiple businesses that they're running. Or perhaps within their business, they have multiple ways that they are bringing in income that's under a single umbrella. And one piece of feedback that I know I get a lot from folks is, oh, this sounds really great. I would love to do this, but my brain just doesn't work that way. I could never run multiple businesses. I could never have multiple jobs, or I could never have multiple ways that I'm earning money under one business because I would feel so scattered. And so we wanted to really address today that drip, trickle, flow, flood isn't really all about that. That's one way. That's certainly one way that you can earn income. But there are many other ways that you can earn income that really have nothing to do with starting another business. And so, Tony, I'll let you take it away.
yeah. And, we've been working on the book and I feel like we do a better job in the book than we have in the podcast of really digging into the different types of income streams and, trading your time for money is just one way to create income. Having a business, and even if you're not directly changing your time for money, is just one way to create income. The more common one and the one that often people start out with is when you're a kid, you get a little bit of money, maybe for your birthday, open up your first savings account, put your $50 in there, and the bank's going to give you a little bit of money. I think we talked about this maybe way back when we had Rhea on, that, often for kids and teens and stuff, they have higher yield accounts specifically for them where maybe they can get 6% on the first $500 or something. And so that's the most basic of basic, right? You put it in the bank and now you're getting income off of that money. And it's easy to just think of that as a drip. And you can create drips with simple things like that, right? With interest or dividend stocks, especially now that you can buy fractional shares in stocks, right? You can invest as little as you want, or as little as you have. You can buy bonds. You can do fractional investing in homes now, where these things are all totally passive. You put in your money and it starts dripping out money. And those income things, yes, you can do all sorts of different things to create trickles and flows and floods, but you can also just, in these categories that are totally passive, just keep putting in more and more money. And as you put in more money, those drips can turn into a trickle and then turn into a flow. And maybe those incomes don't ever turn in, the interest payment or the dividend payment, they may not turn into floods, but at some point, maybe if you go to sell that stock, if it's been growing, now you get that flood of income. And so I think thinking about things in that way of just the simplest investments, and I don't mean simple in that they're not complex. I mean, simple as in they take almost no time to do.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's really where people that are busy and they're raising their family and they're, they have their job or their business or whatever they're doing. Sometimes simple is the biggest thing. I don't have it up anymore because I've moved offices, but I had in my on my cork board, it was a big black box, and outside of it, oh no, sorry, that was something else. That was the thing outside the box. The other one, and just in big bold letters, I just had keep things simple. And
Mhm.
it's easy to make things more complex than they need to be. And I think this was after I had, who knows what I had started or jumped on board or whatever, made my life more complicated. But it doesn't have to be this big complex thing to start creating income streams. And the math is really pretty easy as well. Um, where you say, okay, I'm going to put in $100 in this high yield savings account. It's going to kick me off 4% a year. Well, now I made $4 on that money. It's going to be divided over the monthly payments. That's how much you make. And it really is that simple. And then every time you add money, you know that that income is going to grow. And you can do the math to figure out how much you want that particular part of your investment strategy to be kicking off for you.
Yeah. What are some other things that folks can do? I mean, other than high yield savings, like what would be easy entry points for folks? Would it be mutual fund,
Yeah,
individual IRA?
I think talking, we had on Cheryl Hurst to talk about, you know, she's a financial advisor, and you can obviously go to that level, but it's now most platforms have a zero fee option, which opens up the door. I remember when I was first wanting to start investing in stocks, E-Trade was the cheapest option, and it was $7 a trade. Well, if I only have, you know, $50 to invest and I'm giving
Mm.
away $7, that means I'm already in the whole 14% on day one. It just didn't make sense to me. I didn't
Yeah.
have enough money to start investing and start learning. Now, for very little money, you can start investing and start learning the thing. So it could be individual dividend stocks. Johnson and Johnson is like a classic dividend stock that I think they've
Yeah.
raised their dividend every year for like 100+ years. And, I know on Robinhood, and I'm sure you can do this on the other platforms too, you can search by dividend stock, right? And
Hmm.
they'll show you the percentage. Now, sometimes they're paying a high dividend because they just nosedive in price. Um, so you need to be aware of those pieces too. But there's also mutual funds that are designed for uh, paying dividends, and it'll tell you right there, right? And it's usually somewhere between 0.5% and up maybe to as much as 6% is for on those mutual fund options,
Hmm.
or not even necessarily a mutual fund, right? It can be an ETF. So I think that's also just super low barrier of entry. And what I would urge people to do is to try different things. And if you have a chunk of money that you say, okay, I know I'm going to want this money on this date. Well, go look at the CD options and
Hmm.
see if you can get an extra percent on your money. And people discount this sort of things so much, but all adds up. It doesn't take hardly any time, and that money just keeps compounding for you. And then when you need that income, you can turn your faucet on and have that money start coming to you to live off of, as instead of having it reinvest or just compounding in the account. Um, there's also bonds, and there's a variety of different ways to invest in that. Everything from bond funds to literally, um, you can buy, you can go on and buy the actual bonds. You can do T-bills, and you can go right on to Treasury Direct and like buy the T-bill from the government, or you can buy it through whatever your fine. Well, not all financial platforms have the option to do that, but a lot of them do. There's mutual fund, or not mutual fund, municipal bonds that you can buy, and you can buy municipal bond funds. Some of these things have different tax benefits. So you can dive into the world as much as you want, but the reality is just only make it as complex as you want. I think the biggest thing is creating the habit, putting that money in, having that money work for you. And, we were in the last episode talking about Gen Z that wants a simple life that they can travel and enjoy life and do those. This is a great model for that of you start creating a drip and try a few different things. Put money in the bank where you're getting a savings account, put in some dividend stocks. You can buy fractional home investments now. So you could put some money in there and start getting essentially rental incomes off of that. And maybe that will create a flood at some point if those homes sell for more. And again, you don't have to grow a business or work more hours or, have a rental house that appreciates that the rents appreciate or pay off the loan and now it goes from a trickle to a flow. You can just slowly build up your coffers. And eventually, if you do the math and just kind of stick to it and always contribute, go from a drip to a trickle to a flow to a flood on very simple, very simple products.
Yes.
Am
I
I
love
am I
it.
oversimplifying this, Melissa?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think that we need to simplify it because I mean, folks that are a few paces down the line are probably working with a financial advisor or maybe doing this on their own. So, like, this may not be directed for them. Maybe a good reminder. But I think this is more for folks that are in the place of, okay, I'm making income. I don't want to add more income streams in the traditional sense of like having more work to do and trading my time for money. So, what do I do? And so I think everything that you said is a really great way for them to um, start to dip their toes in and then maybe expand that as time goes on because there are so many resources out there. Another thing, and we talked about this a few episodes back as well, as long as this doesn't require you to take over and do the work, is like buying businesses, right?
Mhm.
So buying a business where it's like a built-in team already. So an example might be a coffee stand is for sale. It already has a full team manager and everything. They're just the owner is looking for somebody to buy it, to be the person who owns it, but the team is running it and you can essentially be an absentee owner. I'll see that a lot on like Biz Buy Sell or any of the sites where you can buy businesses that'll say like absentee owner in there, which generally means that you're not spending a ton of time on the business. Now I know that that can vary and that can change, and you obviously want to be careful. But as some you've bought businesses, Tony. So like, what do you think about that as an avenue for folks?
Yeah, I mean, and this is probably a me problem. I have I feel like if you buy the business and own the whole business, there's just like always a chance that you're going to end up essentially running that business or spending a lot of time in that business. Um, no guarantee that the people that are running the business are going to run it for you forever. There's no guarantee that there won't be issues that require you to step in. That being said, Caribou, one of the hair salons that Lindsay and I owned, we had basically a year where our manager, she essentially ran that business for us.
Mm,
I was still going and doing a few things, but our daughter had been born and Lindsay was busy, you know, raising our child. And it's not that she wasn't working at all, but she wasn't running the business. She was coming in and doing some hair, and our manager stepped up and was largely running the business. And after that year, basically as a thank you and a realization of where we were at in our life, we ended up selling the business to the manager,
mm,
um, and she took it over. I think I did have invest in other businesses in my notes here though, and I think yes, you could buy a whole business, but you also could just invest in a business, right? Sometimes a
Mhm.
business needs some capital for growth. They don't want an active partner. They
Yeah.
want the opposite of that, right? But they want to keep their independence. They want to keep running their business how they're going to run it, but they need an influx of cash to do whatever, maybe buy equipment, maybe it's for product, whatever the case may be, and they might be willing to give away a percentage of their business for that. And if that business does well, you're creating, some sort of income, hopefully a drip trickle
Mhm.
or flow. And if that business eventually sells, or if that business owner eventually wants to buy you back out, maybe you could get a flood off of that. Um, Loans is another way, right? This could be a business loan. This,
Mhm.
I'm not a big advocate of lending money to friends and family, but you know, that is certainly a way where instead of putting your money in the bank, you can be the bank, and
Mhm.
you're going to more than likely get a higher rate than you will in the bank. And so I think those are all good, good options. I think they're great options. I have to say, I go through different stages of my life where I go, "Oh my gosh, why do I have this real estate?" You know, it can be a headache, and I self-manage my real estate, and so it's a job.
Mhm.
And so I learn by doing. And so I have been exploring a lot of these things that I've been talking about, right? The fractional home investing, I've done some lending, the dividend stocks. You know, I definitely have always played the put my money in the bank account that's going to make me the most money kind of thing. Um, and so I think none of the things that we talk about on this podcast have to be forever things, right? You can have different seasons of life where maybe you're working multiple jobs at one point. Maybe you're all in on the stock market at another point of your life. And then maybe you diversify that over time. Maybe you're have a period of time where you bought houses and now you're going to sell them and you're going to carry contracts on them. And now you're taking
Mhm.
what is a pretty active investment and you're turning it into a passive investment. And so, you know, I don't, probably our listeners are tired of hearing about this, but education, go and learn about these different avenues so that you don't have to if you have a job that you like and you don't want to have multiple jobs and you like to pour yourself into what you're doing, that's great. Go do that,
Mhm.
your money, and then find wherever you're comfortable to put your money. And that can be in one product. And when I say product, I mean, a stock or a bond or a savings account or whatever, or spread it across a few and diversify that income and see which ones perform how you like. And there's absolutely no one way to do this. And I think that's the beauty of all this. And it's always changing, right?
Mhm.
There wasn't crypto that long ago, and now you can put your money in crypto. I haven't done this, but I've seen it, right? Where they're like paying you money on the crypto. And I don't know if they're borrowing against it so other people can leverage to buy it. I'm not exactly sure. That's why I haven't stuck any money in it yet. But there's there's all sorts of ways to do this. And I think trying them, testing them, and just keep it simple, right? Whatever you're comfortable with, get educated in something and go that way. So in my opinion, the wrong way is to not be doing anything at all and sticking your head in the sand.
Yeah.
The right way is to start exploring things, put a little bit of money in and see what happens. And if you're uncomfortable, just put in money that don't put any more money than you'd put on a blackjack table, right? And if you can lose it and you'd be okay, then great. And obviously different investment products have different levels of risk associated with it. Um, so how is your and I know Gary is a big part of your education in finances,
He
um,
is the
as
financial manager.
as your financial world evolved in your approach, as far as,
Mm.
as you've matured in your career, and as you've matured in your finances, and as different products come out, and you get, you and Gary get educated, how have you approached that?
I mean, he might be a better person to answer this because he knows all the nuances. But I mean, I would say, like, as far as, geez, how I used to, I was a corporate employee back in my 20s. So I just took my little 401k. So that was it. I mean, I didn't like even think much outside of that. And then when I left and went out on my own, I was like, shrug. Like, I just didn't, I was that type of person that only wanted to do one thing and didn't really even want to think about money or investing money. Um, Obviously, Gary's always been the complete opposite of that. And so thank goodness. He obviously tells me everything and I have access to everything, but we do quite a lot in the stock market. And he's really big into options trading. So I know that's a big thing that he does. And there's all sorts of other things that he does there. And please don't ask me because I don't know. We'll have him back on and he can talk you through. But it does change all the time. And like there are certain seasons when he can spend more time on it than others, right? Because there's one thing of just like putting your like buying a stock, right? Or an ETF or something. Like that's one thing. And doing a little set it and forget it. And a whole other thing when you're watching it every day or every week and you're like, okay, well, this stock went down. So how do we make money on it? Because you can make money on the down, right? Like it's not just the up. So there's lots of ways to do that. But again, that is active. Like that is being more active in your portfolio. I don't do any of that. My husband does that. But he enjoys it and he enjoys it in seasons because right now he's extremely busy with other things. So we have a slightly more set it and forget it, but for Gary, that's never really the case. But then when the winter months come, when he's a lot quieter with other jobs and opportunities, he usually tends to focus back on that. And then he's like, all you'll see is him like crouched over the computer on his phone, making trades. He still makes trades when we're in the middle of like personal training. I mean, he does the stuff. But so that's definitely something that we've done. We invested in real estate when we were really young. And that was something that we did. And then we got out of it later, specifically during the pandemic, because it made sense for us for a number of reasons. One being where the real estate was located. Two, it was the top of the market that we could sell it for. And we just knew we would probably never get that amount again. And it just made sense for some other life reasons. We may or may not go back into that. I mean, we will at some point, but right now we're like unsure. We again, it's like got to be the right opportunity. And so we're always looking and on the hunt. And we do a lot of T-bills. That's another thing that we do, but I don't think we have it all figured out either. But we definitely are very active with our money, meaning like always paying attention to it. Every month we fill out a spreadsheet to update all of our accounts, all of our numbers. Gary built it all. So it, automatically calculates our personal net worth and things like that. So we're on top of it, but it just kind of looks different every month. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was great. And I think you mentioned a few things in there. Uh, 401k, I hadn't talked about that at all. If you have a tax advantage retirement account that your employer, will give you some sort of matching money,
Mhm.
man, if you're putting $100 in there and that means they're going to add $5 to it or $4 to it or $3 to it, whatever it is, you are already up 3 or 4% on your money. That is such a great thing. So
Yes.
if those options are there, please explore those. And again, when we're talking about keeping it simple, that might be literally the most simple thing, right? You check the box on the form that says, I want you to take it out. Maybe you can max that out. You invest as much as you can every week into that. They're matching it. And maybe that's all you're doing. And if you're only doing that, you're still that's still a great thing to be doing. If there's some money left over after that, great, put it in a high yield savings account. And if that's growing and it gets to a point where you go, man, I should put something else with it, then great. Maybe you outside of the 401k, then maybe you go buy some T-bills that are going to pay slightly higher than what the bank is. Or maybe you know, buy a mutual fund, and you can buy stuff that's going to be kicking off this income so that you're creating drip trickles, flows, and floods, or, not necessarily the floods, but the drip trickles and flows, or just let them compound and grow, and you can always sell it and move it into another product. Um,
Mhm.
in the future that creates that income when you need it. The other thing I want, you talked about selling the house during COVID.
Yeah.
And I think that season of life and energy needs to be a big part of this, right? And that's why not only is what you're investing in is changing, and how you're working and how income's coming in changing in the different seasons of life, it's happening not both on how you want to live and the amount of energy you have and the time you have, right? When you're young and in your 20s, you know, probably that's when you're going to have as fewer responsibilities as you're ever going to have, or at least until you're old and, you know, kids are out of the house or whatever the case may be. So look at those different times, or when you're not full on in a career or whatever. And so look at those times. And this is when you say, okay, well, this is the season of life where I need total simplicity. And I don't want this outside noise because I'm focused on these pieces of my life. And then maybe you have other times in your life where you say, well, I have the time to learn about this, or spend time being more actively managing this. And maybe that's the time for real estate, or that's the time for, being a more active investor in whatever it is. Or maybe that's when you're investing in a business, because that still is going to take more research to invest in some privately held business versus some publicly traded business where the information is essentially already there for you.
Mhm.
Um, and then, the other thing that came to my mind is talk to people, talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your bank teller, your financial advisor, your mortgage lender, all these people on your team. We haven't talked about the team as much lately. But again, in the book, we get into a lot of having these discussions, normalizing this discussion around money, and
Mhm.
have those conversations, learn what's working well for other people. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Find out what somebody's doing. And when you find somebody that you go, man, that seems like a good approach, well, mimic what they're doing. I know now there's these new stocks that they will mimic exactly what other people are investing in. I saw that you can invest
Oh.
in, you can do exactly what Nancy
Oh,
Pelosi.
yeah.
Uh,
Right. Yes, I've seen that too. And there are also like a number of, well, I don't want to call them influencers. That's not what they are, but just, folks out there who have like a newsletter you can subscribe to, and they'll give you all their stock picks. And
yeah,
so some people will just do that because it like takes the research piece out of it. And like it allows them just to be like, okay, well, they're not putting a ton of money at it, usually not at first, but it's like, oh, well, if you don't have the time to sit there and research, okay, well, go subscribe to Lynn Alden's newsletter, which is like, $10 a month or something. She gives you all her picks. She's great. I mean, we use it. It's like, we don't exclusively use it, but it's a good resource. So if you just need that where you need to tick a box, do it. It's like
yeah.
it's gonna get
And
you somewhere.
yeah, and that one where you're like mimicking other people, I don't know anything about that. I'm not promoting any of them.
Mhm.
And I don't know that following Nancy Pelosi's picks is the right way. That was just in the ad that I saw. But
There's an
there are,
option.
right, there are just all these different things, right? And, you know, there's thousands of books written on the subjects, and there's people posting all the time. But I think the big thing is talk to your peers, and have that discussion with them. And maybe you even create a little investing group where you guys chat occasionally and say, well, what are you doing? What percentage are you sticking here? How much are you saving? How much are you putting in the stock market? And it doesn't have to be this, money is such a stressor for so many reasons. But I
Hmm.
think if we get rid of the taboo around it and talk about it more and just, the keep it simple, stupid approach of, that if you stick it in this spot and the graph goes up, that over time you can turn what might be a drip now into a flow in the future when you actually want to be living off of that money.
Yeah, I agree. Good stuff. All right, everybody. I hope that this makes you feel a little bit better. And luckily, we have a book coming out later this fall that will dive into this a lot deeper. And we'll keep on with these conversations on the podcast too. And obviously, we'd always love to hear your feedback. So feel free to always shoot us an email or reach out to us on Substack. And with that said, we appreciate you joining us on this episode of Drip Trickle Flow Flood. If you like this episode, please rate and review on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye now.